Hello everyone, DethThePursuer here once again with another video for you all. This time another tier list, Mortal Kombat tier list in fact. We're 2 videos in and I'm already killing my channel. This tier list is also going to be done just a smidge differently than the Resident Evil one I did a while back. And as far as the games I never played, maybe with the exception of one, I'm just gonna leave off the list because I probably don't plan on ever really going back to revisit any of those games that I never really played. And if I do happen to go back and play those games at some point or at any point for any reason or another, I'll probably just update the description on where I would probably place those games, because it probably won't really warrant me redoing the entire video in all honesty. So without further ado, let's get started. I should probably put these back on. Alright, so we have our 5 tiers here. The S tier obviously being the top tier, our middle tiers being A, B, and C, and our final and lowest tier.
It's official. You suck.
So let's jump straight into it with the S tier games, starting off with Mortal Kombat 2. Mortal Kombat 2, oddly enough, starting off as almost one of the games I really didn't have a true appreciation for when I first played it. However, that really changed once I started speedrunning the game. As few know, I started speedrunning a couple years back, and Mortal Kombat 2 and Ultimate were 2 of the few games that I actually started running. And the more time I actually spent with Mortal Kombat 2 during that time, it actually gave me the opportunity to kind of absorb the game and really form a true appreciation for what the game was and what it had to offer, as odd as it sounds when you're talking about speedrunning a game. But I actually got to really just take in everything that game was and what it did, from the more dark tone of the game compared to that of Mortal Kombat 3, the characters and their fatalities and how those were done, and even so much as like the voice acting of Shao Kahn in that game, even something as little as how he says fatality in Mortal Kombat 2 as opposed to the fatality in Mortal Kombat 3.
Fatality. Flawless victory. Fatality.
So next to go up here right next to Mortal Kombat 2 is Mortal Kombat Deception, and I'm going to try to keep this short because I could talk about Deception for hours upon hours on end. It took the things from Deadly Alliance and improved upon them, and on top of that also adding its own fun little features to it. Modes like puzzle combat and chess combat, which I've dumped several hours into during that time and would still do so now. And then you also had Conquest mode, which to me honestly is even something even the modern fighter should take notes from when it comes to putting together a story mode for your fighting game, because it had the adventure elements, you had your cutscenes, and then you also had the fighting. Put that all together in one package for really, again, to me, was like the perfect way of story mode, or the perfect means of a story mode in a fighting game during that time. And I think a lot of modern fighters should switch it up a bit from the standard cutscene fight formula and actually take some notes from Deception's Conquest mode and how to properly really balance your cinematic storytelling and for a more immersive experience. Also, the music in Deception is really good. I highly recommend anybody listen to the soundtrack for that game. Moving on to the next tier, and the games in the A tier, honestly, any of these games could have made their way up to the S tier next to 2 and Deception, but I really didn't spend too much time with these games, or they just fall slightly short, but they're still really good games. And we're gonna start this off with none other than the original Mortal Kombat. The original Mortal Kombat is just an absolute gem to play. every single time I play it, it's just an absolute gem, enjoyable from start to finish. Well, until you get to Goro and Shang Tsung. And after that, we're gonna throw Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 up here. Now, despite what I've said about, you know, being a bit more cartoony, which is kind of true, Mortal Kombat 3, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 is a bit more of a cartoony feeling with the some of the fatalities, even though the animalities and some of the fatalities I do have some enjoyment for some of them, but they're a bit more outlandish and out there compared to Mortal Kombat 2. However, I will say Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 is probably what Mortal Kombat 3 Vanilla should have been from the start. All the characters are there, the music's really good, you got more stages, just overall the better version of Mortal Kombat 3, and again, what it probably should have been from the beginning. Next up, we're gonna throw up here is Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks. Now this is the game, this is the game I had in mind when I said this is probably one I should have spent more time with, because I only did one playthrough of this game, but that one playthrough was an enjoyable playthrough. A beat 'em up style Mortal Kombat, and you kind of have to worry initially at the start how they're gonna handle like boss fights, like how are you gonna handle like fighting Shao Kahn or some of the characters you fight in the game like Kitana. Are you gonna go to like back to the traditional fighting mechanic of Mortal Kombat, or are you gonna try to something else? And they kept it to a more beat 'em up style with pretty much every encounter you face in this game, and it worked and it was fun. So I will definitely go back and probably play Shaolin Monks again, give it a second playthrough, because I enjoyed the first one so much, and they really do need to follow up on Shaolin Monks. For years, people have been clamoring for some sort of follow-up to Shaolin Monks, whether it be Shaolin Monks 2, or for me personally, an HD remaster of this game. There needs to be some sort of follow-up to Shaolin Monks, and they've proven they can do it. Just look at the crypt mode in MK11. Last one up for the A tier is going to be Mortal Kombat X. Now, this might be an odd one for some, but for me, Mortal Kombat X, in a way, as compared to 9 and 11, just felt like almost everything was right with this game, with probably the exception of the story mode. But they expanded on the crypt from 9, which, in all honesty, felt like it could have been its own like little side game or expansion or something like that, and they even expanded upon that more in 11, which I briefly touched on just a few moments ago. The fighting in MKX also felt really good. I don't really know how to describe it, but it was definitely a step up from MK9. MKX also has the better looking and better acting Jax of the 3 games, and I will fight anybody on that.
The hell's going on here?
Ferritor, want you eyes!
You'll get my foot in your ass.
Jumping straight into the B tier, we're only gonna have a few here. Starting off, we're gonna throw Mortal Kombat 9 in here. So the main thing I really enjoy about Mortal Kombat 9 is probably the story mode, probably my favorite story mode of the 3 games of the modern trilogy, just because it was a retelling of the first 3 games, but with a little bit of a twist on it. There was also, again, the crypt. The crypt was neat, even though there was a pretty nasty jump scare in the crypt hiding somewhere. There was also tag mode, which for some reason didn't appear in the later 2 entries, which is pretty unfortunate. I will say, if this game did have the option for CPU versus CPU, I would probably be hosting some pretty gnarly tournaments with this game, both singles and tag, but unfortunately that's just not the case. Next up, we've got Vanilla MK3. Vanilla MK3 still holds a special place for me for a multitude of reasons. One being that it was my first Mortal Kombat game. Secondly, it was the first game me and my younger sister played together. We played Mortal Kombat 3 on the Sega Genesis, as a matter of fact, together. That was pretty much how we bonded, was through playing Mortal Kombat 3 at that time, and I really appreciate this game for that. Other than that, as I've stated earlier, it was missing characters. The ninja characters, Kitana, Jade, Melina. Was pretty disappointed. Finally, on the B tier, we're gonna throw Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. Deadly Alliance is also, I kind of treat it almost in the same vein of Deception, just not as much. I mean, as you can see, it's not up there with it. But in the same where when I first played Deadly Alliance, I never expected to see just how much of a creepy vibe it kind of gave off at first, and I actually liked that. One thing that did come off a bit weird was Deadly Alliance's conquest mode, which I don't know, it was like a training sort of story thing. This game also had cooking with Scorpion as one of its little hidden like Easter eggs, and I wish little stuff like that I wish would come back to Mortal Kombat games.
This week on Cooking with Scorpion, learn about chopping, tenderizing, chopping, cake decorating, and chopping.
Alright, so next up, and we're getting ready to wrap this up, we're going to be going on to the C tier. This one's probably going to have the most games on it. Starting off, we're probably just going to go ahead and throw Mortal Kombat 11 on there. Easily my least favorite of the modern trilogy. Just nothing, it was almost like it just, almost sort of like a heads and tails sort of thing. I don't know how to put it. Like, everything that felt right in Mortal Kombat X just did not feel right with this game. And the only thing I will give Mortal Kombat 11 is that it easily has the best crypt of the three. Like this, the MK11's crypt just further cements my point from earlier that they show that they could make another sort of like Mortal Kombat adventure sort of deal. Even again, maybe a follow up on Shaolin Monks. Going up next to MK11 is Mortal Kombat 4. Now, unfortunately, Mortal Kombat 4 was just one of the titles I didn't care too much about. And this, honestly, I tried playing MK4 at a time where, honestly, I think I was still pretty much on the high with the 3D games, being Deception and Deadly Alliance. So I was pretty much at that time being spoiled by those, and I really didn't have too much care in the world for 4. I will at some point. I probably might try to go back and revisit 4 again just to see if my feelings on that game either improved or really rather the same. Next up is Mortal Kombat Mythologies Sub-Zero. Now, this is only down here mainly because I didn't finish it. The last time I attempted to play this game was back, I think, when I was in high school. I think like when I was probably a freshman or sophomore. And back then when I tried to play this, I remember this game being really difficult, and as a result of that, I did not finish it. So at some point, again, Mythologies for certain is a game I definitely plan to revisit to finish. I've seen like, multiple like cutscenes and stuff from the game, but I want to actually go back and finish Mythologies for myself, and maybe, who knows, when I do finish it, maybe my feelings on this game, maybe this game will actually move up the list a little bit. We'll see. Second to last game on this is Mortal Kombat Trilogy. Now, boy, what can I say outside of the fact that Mortal Kombat Trilogy was just an overall broken mess? That's pretty. I don't say that in a sense that it was bad. It was pretty much a celebration of the past 3 Mortal Kombats, with all the characters from those games coming together in that game. However, a lot of those characters were completely busted. I specifically remember Raiden for certain in this game being so broken and just overpowering. It was so ridiculous. The one thing I will say again, Mortal Kombat, and one weird thing about Mortal Kombat Trilogy, for some reason the tracks in Mortal Kombat Trilogy are slowed down versions of pretty much their tracks in the games that they were in. The Mortal Kombat 3, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 tracks are slowed down, and I think the Mortal Kombat 2 tracks are slowed down as well. Maybe, I don't think so, but the Mortal Kombat 3 tracks for certain were slowed down, and I actually like the slowed down tracks. There's also the fatality or the finisher jingle in the Nintendo 64 version of that game of Mortal Kombat Trilogy that I actually really did like, outside of everything else in the 64 port. Final game to go up on the C tier, and this one barely makes it. I mean, this is like the lowest of the low, and that's Mortal Kombat Armageddon. Now, hear me out, because this game actually did something that honestly I am a sucker for certain games in general, and that's the ability to create your own character. That's why like Mortal Kombat Armageddon has that sort of like almost like a soft spot for me. It's just because of the ability to create your own character. It was also the first time I actually played online ever on the PS2, which, you know, worked about as well as you would think it would. But everything else in Armageddon obviously fell flat. The conquest to me just wasn't as appealing as Deceptions. You had Motor Combat, which is basically Mortal Kombat's version of Mario Kart, which had its moments here or there, but again, compared to Deception, wasn't as fun to play as Puzzle Combat or Chess Combat. And they also did something that honestly they should not have done with this game, and that was completely take away every base character's fatalities or own unique fatalities, and just basically said, here's a creative fatality system that everyone has to use. Now, I would have been fine with that if it was just, you know, something for the creative combatant, but for every single character on the roster, base characters that usually have their own unique fatalities, no. Don't ever do that again. If for some reason any feature from Armageddon has to come back, I would take creative combatant any day, but don't do creative fatality ever again, especially if you're gonna just say wipe everyone's fatalities and give them that. Don't do that. Well, here we are. The last tier, the bottom tier.
It's official. You suck.
Now, you may have noticed we got about 7 games left over. I'm only gonna probably put 2 here. So the first game that's gonna go up here is Special Forces. Now, I have seen quite a bit of Special Forces growing up. Even to this day, I still have to go back and look up Special Forces just almost like in a sort of pinch me moment, just to like confirm, like, was that game really that bad? And every time I go back, yeah, it's that bad. This is one of those, this is like Umbrella Corps to me, where I just seeing how bad it was is just enough for me. I don't think I actually would want to play Special Forces. I don't think I'd be able to do it. And the next one and the last one to go here is Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe. Now, this game, I will go on record to say that this game had the potential to be one of the better crossover games that we've gotten, one of the better crossover fighters that we've gotten in recent memory. However, what potential it had, they kind of squandered just because they, for some reason, decided to neuter everybody in a sense where we didn't want to see our superheroes getting killed, or we didn't want to, see our superheroes doing this to this person, or whatever the excuses were. Pretty much the fatalities and the heroic brutalities were like neutered versions of what they should have been for a game like this. I mean, it's Mortal Kombat, and you have something like DC, which DC isn't exactly a very like family friendly or as you would think. There's some pretty dark stuff to happen in the DC universe, hence Injustice. But the fact that they kind of did all that and we got what we got with these more MK versus DC kind of makes it almost like the laughing stock of the franchise. Almost, for me personally, I don't even like to really acknowledge this game exists sometimes just because of what they did. Also, Dark Dawn. But that's going to be it, guys, for this tier list. I know we have 5 games left over. Mortal Kombat Tournament Edition, I never really seen much of or played. Mortal Kombat Gold, I never got to play, but I think it was like I think it was probably like the improved version of MK4 because I think it added a couple more characters. Ultimate Mortal Kombat, which for some reason there's 2 of those on there, I think was like Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 ported to the DS, I believe, which I was curious about at one point, still kind of curious, but never really got to look into it, so I wanted to leave that off the list. And Mortal Kombat Advance, I thought at some point I had actually thought about throwing Mortal Kombat Advance up on the bottom tier with DC and Special Forces, because I believe I remember seeing a bit of Mortal Kombat Advance, and it looks god awful. But I figured, you know what, I won't overdo it, because the bottom tier, I mean, I kind of stretched it with the bottom tier enough as it is with Special Forces. So I think it's just best that we just ignore MK Advance and just leave it off the list. With that said, guys, if you stuck through this whole tier list and if you enjoyed what you saw, be sure to click that little subscribe button at the bottom and I guess the little bell next to it for notifications whenever I upload a video or whatever. Till next time, guys, this is DethThePursuer, signing off.
Stars.
No. No.